Welcome to the Vancouver UFO Meetup group. Today is February the 20th, 2021, and our guest is Crystal. Her talk today is called The Push and Pull of an Interdimensional War. And this is Crystal's second talk with us. Her first was on January 2nd, 2021. And she'll be going over her lifetime of experiencing what she believes to be a push and pull of an interdimensional war between good and evil forces on this planet. In chronological order, she'll list her experiences as a child, including multiple near-death experiences and astral travel. As Crystal details her own experiences, she'll reveal the powerful messages being sent to humanity since 2004 through her channeling what she calls dream clusters. The dream clusters come to her for 3 nights in a row, detailing important information for humanity. She's now been told to share the warnings with the world as humanity faces a future of uncertainty. Crystal's previous 3 videos with us are on our YouTube channel, and you can see that right on Vancouver UFO on YouTube. And Crystal's new website is listed below this video. It's called thelightgridnetwork.com. So for this talk, there's about, I guess, around 15 of us. So we'll have our mic off, and Crystal will give her a presentation, maybe about 2 hours long, and after that, we'll turn on the mics and have a question and answer period. And if any of you want to ask a question that period, you can put up your hand with the reaction buttons under Zoom. There's a reaction button. You click hand, so I'll see the hand in case there's more than one at a time, so it'd be a bit more orderly. Yeah, so we'll go from there. So welcome, Crystal. We're looking forward to your second talk.
Thanks, guys. I'm really excited. Thank you. Thanks for having me. And I'm looking forward to this. It's been a huge process going over my life with a fine-tooth comb and trying to make sense of things that didn't make sense until now. And like I said, Ian, thanks again for your help in just supporting me while I tied things together. And I'm very grateful to the guides and ETs that I'm working with for helping me get through the process of uncovering reality. So I was blessed to be able to see that the reality checks that they were sending me so that I could verify that this was indeed really happening, because it's so out there, it's so beyond this reality that it is hard for us to comprehend what's really going on around us. It is interdimensional. So yeah, I'm gonna share my screen here, and I'm going to start the presentation. So do you guys see that okay? Yeah, everyone can see that?
That's full screen?
I think it's on full screen.
Looks full screen, great.
Okay, great. So yeah, a lifetime of unknown contact. And that was something important because I was having types of contact, but they were not the same each time. And so sometimes it was as if I was being prepared and taught through my lifetime, but also visions, dreams, interventions, meaning they've literally saved my life from accidents. And I'll go through that more, but also being caught up in a push-pull. So, having experiences where you feel literally like you're just being pushed and pulled in different directions, which is part of this interdimensional war. So there we go, 1980s. I'm going to start off with, I had a near-death experience as a child. And so I do have a very vague memory of it because I was quite young. I was only about, I don't know, between 2 and 3 years old. But I was at my grandma's house, and she lived in a complex where there was an in-ground pool. And back in the 80s, they didn't always have fences around the pools. So I just took off and drowned myself in the pool. So a neighbor came and saved me. And that was my first near-death experience. I was very young, so I didn't remember too much, but I do know that there was a tunnel of light experience that happened during that. So the next point I'm going to go into is a couple years later, my mother has a dream that the human race was enslaved by extraterrestrials. Now, that sounded like just a dream, but when I tie it all together, it was a very unusual thing for my mom to say to me one day. She woke up and said, I had the most horrible dream. I had a dream that the human race was enslaved by extraterrestrials. And so years later, I think about that because the ETs did actually tell me that that was what was happening right now in the world, that we had already had bad dark ETs here, and that they had created hierarchy and essentially enslaved the human race, which is, it's out there, but so I'm going to go to my next point. I have a second near-death experience. So that was in 88. And that experience, I didn't have any type of accident. I was just sleeping. I went into a tunnel. I saw people in the tunnel. The tunnel was beautiful. It was so peaceful. It was like, felt like home. And there I actually even saw like my family dog who had passed away. I saw my pet bird who had passed away. He was sitting on somebody's shoulder. And they were silhouettes at the end of this tunnel of light. And so it was a very clear NDE without actually experiencing death, which is, again, this is kind of an unusual thing. So I'll go to the next one. Now, within weeks or even maybe a month of that second near-death experience, I started to experience astral travel. And so I don't know how many contactees have experienced astral travel before, or anyone in the group who's experienced it, but it is exactly the same as if you were doing it in your body, like you're moving around. It's complete reality. So I woke up on the ceiling with my nose touching the ceiling. And so as a child, I was I was 7, just about 8, and I thought to myself, okay, I want to prove that this is real, because it felt so real. And so I floated downstairs and I went into the basement and I pushed up a ceiling tile. And in the morning, I remembered everything. I woke up, ran downstairs, and there was the ceiling tile, and it was in the center of the room and it had been pushed up. And so I had proved to myself at that time that was real. That really happened, that I actually did that. So that was a turning point for me, because as a child, I realized, like, we have a soul, there's more than just our body, our physical body. So it was essentially maybe a type of training or learning. They were teaching me. There must have been these events were not just random events. They were happening, and they were teaching me things that were extremely important about spirituality and life outside of your matter body. So the next one is, now this is a recent memory that I just uncovered. And so I can say in 1985 and in 1989, my mother and I were both abducted. So my mother and I were abducted when I was 4 and when I was 8. And the both procedures, both times, it was medical based. So my mom specifically was experiencing different medical procedures, a lot of them around egg extractions and checking her overall health. She was being monitored, and I was as well, but I didn't experience, I don't think I experienced like an egg extraction or any type of thing until a little bit later on. So there were 2 memories that I've recently uncovered, and they came to me almost like I had a cue, and I started to hear a sound, like a frequency or a humming. And then those 2 memories came to me simultaneously, layered upon each other, which was really strange, because I've never experienced a memory like that, where it's 2 layered memories. So it was 2 different events that came to me simultaneously with an audio cue. So that was just recently. So I remember the abductions now. And another thing that I wanted to mention was, around that time, we started to experience a very dark paranormal activity in our house, and it was specifically directed at my mother and I. Um, this got really bad. It got really, really bad for us. Examples are, I would leave my room and my toys would be all over my room. I'd come back in and they'd be in a perfect circle. My mom and I woke up one morning and the furniture was stacked on top of itself. And so we were getting really freaked out. And my mom, I think, was taking the brunt of it. So right before my mother's death, maybe a few months before, her grandmother passed away and she died of a stroke. So that wasn't super unusual, except that the proximity between her death and what is going on with my computer? My computer is like, okay. So it was right before my mother died, and she actually died by suicide because she was hearing voices telling her to commit suicide. And we were experiencing such extreme dark and paranormal activity in the house that it was becoming unbearable for her. And so it was very sad, but she did commit suicide. And what's even crazier is that within weeks after her mother committed suicide. My grandmother committed suicide, and it was the same thing, hearing voices telling her to commit suicide, and she had a mental health crisis. So there is the dark side of the phenomenon that a lot of people who are involved with this seem to be experiencing, and I speak openly about it. A lot of people have not, and it's really hard to tie it together because it's so subtle. But when you put it together in a bigger picture, it's a push-pull. So this is the dark side of it. This is like people that are contactees who are involved with phenomenon or who have genetic links. This is my theory. People who have the genetic links, like for us, we have strong Celtic line, and it comes from my mom's side for sure. So it might have been that they were attacked, and I know that I experienced that throughout my whole life, but I'll go over it. But this happened. So within a couple months of each other, all of my bloodline, my great grandmother, grandmother, and mother all died.
Wow.
So this is where it gets really weird, because then I guess we thought it was social workers, but they showed up at the house, and for 18 months we had people sitting outside of the house watching me. They had a camera, they took photos, they took notes, and they were wearing suits. They would come at 3:00 after school, and they were there watching me. And so not until years later did I ever even tie that into any of this, right? It takes so much to be able to tie that together because it's just so out there. It's so out there. But they were definitely there. And then the next event that happened is someone broke into our house and they left a message for my dad. And the message, I don't know exactly what the message was because I didn't see it, but they did leave a message, and they actually left like a trail of magazines going from the back door of the house all the way up the stairs, up and down the hallway and to his room, and then they tucked a magazine into his nightstand, and then they went over to the bathroom and they tucked a magazine into the bathroom drawer. So there was 2 drawers with the magazines tucked in and like this trail through the house. So it was a really odd message. Whatever was behind the drawers, I don't know. And like I can't say for sure, but it was really unusual. Who would break into someone's house and leave a trail of magazines? Like, why would they do that? But then the next thing that happened may explain that. And I can't say for sure what the message was, but my dad started to clip newspaper clippings of UFOs and aliens and cattle abductions and mutilations, and he started to show them to me. He'd leave them on the table, and it was almost like he was trying to scare me. Like he there was more going on, but we never talked about it. I've never really got any answers, but looking back, that just seems really odd. So I'm going to go into the 90s now. So one thing that a lot of people in the world, and myself included, is that we saw the repetitive number sequence 9/11. And that was happening a lot before 9/11. So I saw that a lot. Another thing that I wanted to mention is I'm seeing 9/11s again. So I don't know exactly what that means yet, but that's the first time since 9/11 happened that I started seeing 9/11s again. So here's another one. I do have or had in 1997 a dream of a Celtic shaman, and going over and uncovering and talking to Jeff and talking to Ian. Um, there's a possibility that that dream, because it didn't really go anywhere, like there wasn't really much to it. So there is a possibility that that is a screen memory that is still covering up another abduction. And then again, another dream about a wolf. And again, didn't really go anywhere. There wasn't really any information coming forward, but it was just sort of like a screen image or a screen memory. And so there is a possibility, and I haven't uncovered those ones yet, but that is a strong possibility that that was another abduction. And then again, the dark paranormal experiences continued, and they were just affecting everyone in the house. It wasn't just me, but there was definitely dark paranormal things happening. So another one that's a really interesting one. So here's the kind of the push and the pull is that I was in high school, and I was walking home from work, and I had worked on the weekend, and it was about noon. I had worked like the early breakfast shift at a fast food restaurant, and I went across the street. I pushed the button, and I waited, and the light turned red, and it was my turn to go. And I got this sort of daze, like I just blanked out for a second, and then snapped out of it. And I went to take a step, and my foot was just sort of hovering above the curb, and I felt an arm come out of nowhere. There was nobody standing beside me, nobody standing behind me. There was nobody with me. It was just me at the crosswalk on a highway. It was anyway, the arm hit me so hard it knocked the wind out of me, and a speeding car came through the intersection, and it would have hit me. If that arm hadn't come out and stopped me at that moment, I would have been killed by that car. It was going at least 120 kilometers an hour, and it was going through a red light, and it was perfectly lined. So somebody saved me. Now, I always chalk that up to being that I had a guardian angel. But this is where it gets weird. Does your guardian angel, like, our guardian angels usually about 3.5 feet tall, because that is the area that hit me from a small person, like a small being. It wasn't from like a human height so that was a little odd. And so, yeah, putting it together, it would have matched with the Greys that I have met and that I met in the future and that I have had experiences with. But so they did save me, or, a very short guardian angel, but it makes more sense that you would say it was ETs. It was the ETs, right? So the other one is that I was saved again in 2000. Another freak accident. So I was on my way to work. I went to pull out money from an ATM, and the money got stuck in the rollers of the ATM. Like, it was a $20 bill, and it got stuck. It wouldn't spit it out. And I had never actually seen that happen before. And I don't think I ever have. But yeah, it got stuck. It wouldn't spit the money out. So I was waiting and trying to pull it and trying to get into the machine as it's spitting it out, trying to like get to the bill, but I couldn't get to it. It was deep in there. So it wasted about, I don't know, probably 15 seconds or so. And then it finally spat out the money. And what happened was I continued down the road, and a huge gust of wind blew. It knocked over signs, and it knocked over this pole from the top of a hotel. The pole was about, almost it was really thick. Like it was, almost, half the size of a telephone pole, say, in diameter. So it was pretty, it was enough to really hurt you. It was knocked from the top of the hotel. So it came clattering down to the sidewalk below. And it was again, perfectly matched with where I would have been walking. So this ATM thing, it wasn't a coincidence. And somebody came running out from the hotel and went, "Oh my God, are you okay?" And he's like, "You are so lucky. You must have a guardian angel." And so that was something I started to hear often because I was experiencing these things, this guardian angel theory. So that's what I always thought it was guardian angels. So the next one, I'm going to go into 2004. And so this is a dream cluster. And again, I'm not aware that I'm having contact at this point, but I'm getting these occasional dream clusters. So the first thing I'm going to go over is this Black Army. So they're dressed all in black. They are very high tech and sophisticated. They have equipment that is it's stuff that we don't know we have. Like it's really it's concerning, like it's scary. These soldiers are like super soldiers. And they come to North America. They are specifically Chinese soldiers that I'm seeing on the coast here. And they've come over. It's an invasion. So I saw scenes in Vancouver and on Vancouver Island. And so these the Black Army was they were hunting people. There were signs of a struggle, like of a revolution. So people did try to fight back. And so, but yeah, the area around here was just devastated. And it looked to me as though maybe there were nuclear weapons that had been used. And so the next part of that dream cluster was unrelated to the war, but it felt like another lesson. And it said like, that when you die, you can only take love with you. And so I've tied this in with the current situations. And is this the same for our ascension? So we talk about humanity is ascending. And so this could be one of these lessons that was incorporated into this, because dreaming about war and death and dying and people being killed is pretty dark. So I think they gave me a little bit of hope by throwing that message in there, that love is what we need to focus on. It's what we take with us when we die. It's what we take with us into the next dimensional field, the higher vibrations. It's love. So I hope I'm not going too fast. I hope I'm covering I hope I'm covering everything okay. But yeah, so that was the dream cluster in 2004. So in 2010, I had the direct communication. So that was a huge, like life-changing event in which I met extraterrestrials. They came to me and they spoke to me for a very long amount of time. I'm talking like, 6 to 12 hours. It was a long time. So I'm going to go over some of the quick points, but I do have another video about this, and it's great detail about that event because it is very specific information that was given to me, and it was very specific information given to humanity. So they said that they came here in 1947 after a radio frequency was sent out into the universe by humans. They came from Orion's belt. That's what they told me. They came from Orion's belt. They call themselves the scientists, which we know them as the Greys. They describe the current infestation of dark extraterrestrials and the dark grid that they have created to essentially enslave humanity. So extraterrestrials told me that we have a current infestation of dark extraterrestrials. And I think that's really significant. That's massively important. They also talked about warnings of war and warnings of planetary leadership's agenda for total domination. So they did have some strong warnings for us because they're definitely concerned, and they're watching this, and they're worried about humanity. So they're talking to us. So they also warned us of the waves, and they showed me the waves. And again, that is something that a lot of contactees and even like shaman and meditators, we're all having the same vision of waves. So this is like one of the most common things that everybody is seeing. We're all seeing it. It's a message. It's a really clear message, and it's not just one or two or 5 people. I think it could be millions of people, if not for sure thousands or hundreds of thousands of people on the globe who are seeing waves for sure. Um, they also talk about a matter body and a light body. So it ties into some of these messages and these dreams that I was having before, where they were showing me, that we don't, it's not all just your physical body, that there is a light body. And so they just, explained it to me in a conversation during this direct communication event. Now, they also said that we can speak to them anytime. And I think that's important because that means that we are tapped into consciousness and able to communicate through consciousness. And I think that that is so, so, so important for humanity to know. It's not like, oh, well, why don't they just land on the front lawn of the White House? Like, well, why don't we raise up to consciously connect with them instead of them having to go down to come into our dimensional field and physically, maybe they're trying to encourage us to raise our own consciousness so that we can become part of the new world and the new time, the new era that is coming. So I think that's why they haven't just dropped into the White House. And they actually tried. They said that they tried and that they were told to go away and they were shot at, and we were basically being held hostage. And so that's what they actually said to me, and it makes sense. So I'm going to go to the next point, and that is, after that event, I started to see UFOs, and they were connected with my thoughts. So if I would ask for them to come, they would show up right away. I can show you guys the videos, and I will show you videos of the UFO. I have one recently, the most recent one, and I'll be including that in the presentation here, so you can see that's really happening. Like, they are showing themselves when you ask them to. When I ask them to, they come and they show themselves. Mine are usually green, although some people have a different color. Like, for example, one of the contactees sees red ones, another one sees white. So we kind of have our own colors sometimes. So the next one is right after this contact event, I had a dream cluster. And so this was explaining a lot of things in more detail. So I was seeing it. So the first thing was that the waves that were coming, or the waves, that I think they're coming, right? So they said that they were 2.5 kilometers high, roughly. So they were high enough to just wipe everything out. And also, when they showed me the waves, I was standing in the town of Hope. And I think that was another message where they were telling us, like, have hope, stand in hope. So they were showing me these waves in more detail. The other one that was important is that I saw a Peruvian shaman, more than one, and their tribes. They were waiting on the highest peak in the Andes Mountains, and they were waiting for their rescue as the waves started to wash over the Andes. And there were collection points. And so I was seeing that in my dream, but I specifically saw the Peruvian. I've seen them twice with my experiences with the ETs, the Peruvian shamanic contactees. So that's of great significance because they've mentioned it more than once. And yesterday, by coincidence, His Holiness the Dalai Lama actually came forward and said that he was designating Peru as being the new spiritual center of the earth. And so he actually said that yesterday, that became public yesterday. So there's a connection there. And I think that's important. I think it's really important. So I'm going to go to the next point. The next dream that I had during this dream cluster was a council of 13. I was the 13th person in the council. So I showed up, I was in a spaceship and I was in a board. It was like a boardroom, you know, it was a futuristic looking boardroom. And they were human, but they were all elder women. And they said, how is your mission going on Earth? And, oh, we see you've been doing this work. And I thought, I think you have the wrong person. I didn't think that I would say I had any kind of important mission. And I was a little confused during the meeting because they seemed to really be proud of me, but I felt like I hadn't done anything in my life that was of any like significance. Like I was a drunk. I was not doing anything really. I was just staying alive, I guess, was one of the things, but I mean, I just didn't feel like I was actually doing much with my life. So they seemed to be insistent and they said, no, you're doing a great job and, you know, keep up the mission. Like it was as if I was on a mission and there was something very important that I was doing, even though of course at the time during that dream, you know, it didn't make sense. So tying it together now, you know, that does mean something. So the next dream was again the Black Army, and this was more detailed about the Black Army. So when I say the Black Army, it's because they're dressed all in black. So that's why I call them the Black Army. They are mind controlled to an extent. There's some kind of mind control device going on. I think it might be in their helmet, but I'm not entirely sure how it's working. But it's definitely happening. That is definitely the soldier of the future, if not near future. If what I'm seeing is going to happen, you know, in our lifetime, this is definitely mind control is happening. There was another thing that concerned me was the use of white phosphorus powder on civilians. So there were things that are against the Geneva Convention that were used to kill people, and they were white phosphorus. I unfortunately had to watch a scene in which people were killed by it, and it was absolutely traumatizing. And I can tell you, it is absolutely horrific what it can do to the human body. I don't want to go into the details of it because it's just it's so awful, and it actually makes me upset talking about the things that I've seen. So these dreams weren't just like, oh, this is going to happen. And I was in it. I was watching the war happen. I was watching people being murdered in mass numbers. I was watching how they died. I could hear what they were screaming out it was just so dark, and it was so hard to wake up from that, and then just to go back to living a normal life like that felt real. Like that felt like that was actually going to happen, and it was a warning, and it was really disturbing. The next thing that I saw was these Nazi. It was definitely like Nazi type of energy. They didn't have the insignia, they didn't have the symbol, but they were Nazi. That was the energy that came with them, and that's what they looked like to me, this Nazi. So they were rounding up women and children, and they were killing them in firing squads. So that's the dream that I had, was they were just rounding them up. It was like an extermination. We were being exterminated. They didn't care anymore. Like it didn't even matter what you did. You were just being exterminated. So yeah, they started in the cities, and they used the big bombs on the cities, and then they worked their way out into the outlying areas, the remote places, and they essentially hunted people with these helicopters, black helicopters. And it was really brutal, and I was having a really hard time. I started to get PTSD after this dream cluster. So I'm going to go forward now to 2000.
I have a question for you, Crystal.
Yeah.
It's Mimi. It's very interesting that you're seeing two totally different factions. I know that it's hard for you to go into this, but one faction that you saw was a Black Army.
Yeah.
And you know, the SS officers wore black,
Oh, okay. Okay.
right? In the past. But when you saw the Nazi looking people,
Yeah.
what did they look like?
They wore blue. They wore,
But what was their countenance like?
oh, they looked like, Aryan, like they had square jaws and blue eyes and blonde hair.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
There were two different forces that seem to have teamed up. So it was like you've got these guys for this, and then you've got these guys to kind of do the dirty work. Like they were both just sort of doing the dirty work, but one was like doing the more um uh I don't know, like technical bombing stuff, and the other was rounding the people up and just getting rid of them. They
Say,
were working
Crystal, can you
together.
lower your head a bit? Like where the top of your head gets cut off a lot.
Is that okay?
Well, you can see yourself in the video, right?
Okay.
Yeah, that's good. But
Thank
we'll watch it. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So this, I mean, this stuff is super hard for me to talk about because um it's like I was there, right? It's like going to war. You're there and you see it. You see everything. So yeah, I mean, even now, like I get emotional talking about these things because it was the worst thing that I've ever seen. These series of dreams were traumatizing. They were really traumatizing. And they're, you know, in the dreams, like I wasn't in it. I was everyone. I was everywhere. I was like watching it from a kind of like a God perspective. And those kind of dreams are prophetic dreams. So those are dreams that you are um they're usually of significance. Like often for me, those kind of dreams, if it was a warning or a message, it would come true. You don't have prophetic dreams about something that's not going to happen, or that, you know, is not a possibility. Like it's almost, yeah, it feels to me that we're heading for that, and it's a warning. So I'm going to go forward to 2010, and I'm going to go over another experience. And this one is, I think, kind of major. So I was saved from a cougar attack in 2015. So I lived in the mountains and a cougar was in my driveway, and it's really unusual for cougars to come that close to town, but it was in my drive. It was huge. It was a 200-pound cougar in my driveway. I went out to my car to grab something, and it was nighttime, and it tried to maul me. So there were two things that happened during me trying to fight the cougar off. So the first thing is my neighbor was awoken at the exact same time. He was given instructions specifically to go to his gun closet, to load a shotgun, and to walk over to my house. And he did it. He didn't even
Wow.
know me. He did it. He loaded his gun. He walked over. And as he was about halfway, now at this point, the cougar was about to jump. It was wiggling its butt like a cat right before it pounces, you know, like wiggling, and it was about to jump right on me. But the car was blocking us, so he couldn't see me and the cougar on the other side of the car. And I couldn't scream because I was now too scared to even make a sound, because I tried screaming and no one was hearing me. But he hadn't heard me. He was far enough away, and he was actually woken up by something telling him to come to my house with a gun, and he did. But he thought, wait a second, how can I just show up at my neighbor's house with a loaded weapon? Like what am I doing? And he turned around and he started to walk back to his house. So he was awoken. And so the cougar was milliseconds from mauling me, and I experienced a flash of light, and I was moved away from the cougar. I ended up at my front door. So again, at this time, I did not know. I didn't even put it together, like that I was actually, I thought it was again like guardian angels. I said, that's so weird, like to have a lifetime of being saved, you know, have all these events. But looking back, the flash of light was most definitely the ETs that I've been you know, involved with for my whole life. They saved me. They tried to get another person to intervene first, and when he changed his mind, they just said, okay, well, we'll just have to intervene now, because they didn't want me to die. And that cougar was definitely definitely big enough to kill me, and was very hungry. So yeah, saved at the last second by a flash of light, and moved about 12 feet away from the cougar. And the cougar was confused. We were both really confused. We were just standing there looking at each other for a second, like, what just happened? But yeah, so that happened. And then I also felt like it was really important to mention that from about 2010 even till present, I was experiencing abnormally bad luck. And like, I'm not talking about little things going wrong. I'm talking like major bad luck. For example, I bought a house, and the day that I bought the house, it flooded. It flooded so badly I couldn't live in it, and the insurance company denied me coverage. So I literally bought a house, and I didn't even get to move into it, and then I had to pay for it. Then I got a few jobs, and the jobs wouldn't pay me. So it was like I was just having this abnormally bad luck. I just couldn't get on my feet. And I went through this whole life thinking like that it was just me not doing good enough. Like I wasn't trying hard enough, and I wasn't living up to my potential. And I just thought, why is it so much easier for other people? Like, why is everything so hard? Like, why am I having like constant bad luck? Like, and this sort of dark force around me all the time. Like, it felt like I was running in quicksand. I was just having, super weird stuff happening, and then being saved, and then very, very, very bad luck. Another thing that I witnessed twice, was time slips. And so I wanted to go into that because I think it's really fascinating. And I'm not sure exactly what it means, but I wanted to bring it up to the group here. Was in 2013, I witnessed the first time slip. So I was in my house, and it was across the street from these decommissioned railroad tracks. And I listened to a train roll along the tracks, and it was it wasn't like an old fashioned steam train. It sounded like a modern day train. It was shaking the ground. And when I went outside to see this train, this ghost train, it wasn't there. You couldn't see the train, but you could hear it. You could feel it. I wasn't alone. I had a house guest with me, so we were both experiencing the phenomenon. So this time slip, that's what I think it was, right? They call it the ghost train. Some people in the area have actually experienced that before, but I think it was a time slip. I think that there was some kind of dimensional field variations, and that I was experiencing part of another dimension. And so back when those train tracks were there, say in the 80s, 90s, even as early as that, those tracks were still operating, but they weren't anymore. And so that was one of them. The other one was actually experiencing the most it was actually kind of scary, because I moved into an apartment, and I was unpacking my boxes, and that was in 2015. I was unpacking my boxes, and a man walked up to me in my apartment. He was massive, huge guy. He was a big guy with like a long beard. He kind of looked like a biker, like shaved head. Big, tall guy, and he walked up to me, crouched down, and was trying to figure out what I was doing in his house. And I was like, ah! And I fell against the boxes. And when I fell and screamed, I watched him vanish into cubes, like tiny, tiny little pixels. He just dissolved. And so so I asked people in the area, who used to live here? Like, I thought it was a ghost. I thought I saw a ghost. I thought, wow, he must be dead. And I saw his ghost, and his residual energy still here. Well, when I talked to, because it's a small town and everybody knows each other and people knew the man, and they said, no, he's alive. He used to live there though. You're describing the person who used to live in this apartment, but he's alive. He's not dead. He's not a ghost. And I realized that that may have been what I would consider another time slip, where we dimensionally overlapped, and he was looking at me going, "What are you doing in my apartment?" And I was thinking the same thing. What are you doing in my apartment? And so we were overlapping. So that was an interesting thing. So that's a ghost train, and then the former tenant. And then in 2018, I had a spiritual awakening in which I completely quit drinking, and it was literally cured within one day. I just had this overwhelming feeling of love and divine connection, and I never drank again. I never picked up I never picked up another drink. I never had another drop. And when I was younger, I used alcohol to cope with a lot of the stuff that I was dealing with, the PTSD, my childhood trauma, and so I had a drinking problem over my lifetime. And so in 2018, on March 25th, was the day that I just was suddenly cured of this. And it was unusual because most people have to really work at dealing with their alcoholism, whereas I had what I considered to be a spiritual awakening and was able to, that was it. It was over. I just never drank again. And I felt like that was important because it is a really difficult thing for people to just quit like that, to have an epiphany and simultaneously quit and never look back. So I wanted to bring that up. And then in 2021, I had an epiphany where I began to meditate and to make contact with the ETs, consciously. And I have had just an incredible amount of healing and awakenings around my life and around the phenomenon, and started to live up to the calling that I believe I was given, and that was to share the messages and to explain to the world and to others that this is a real phenomenon. There are contactees who have lived these unusual lives, like where we've had just paranormal phenomenon. We've had a sort of a dark force around us that seems to be stifling us from our true potential. And so that is a very recent thing where I've gone public, and it was something that I didn't feel like I had a choice. It was like, okay, you're doing it now, you're ready, now you have to share this. So I'm going to go over 2020 and 2021 dream cluster. So when I made contact again, I had another dream cluster, and again, this was warnings, so it is a little bit more dark and it's pretty detailed. Some of it's quite detailed. So this one was the Black Army, and they showed me like this Holocaust style execution factory. And so at this point, I had been working with a guide, and he took me to this factory. We were above the factory. I was with my guide, and he showed me what was happening in the near future to humanity. They were mostly elderly people who were in this lineup, and it was sort of like an airport style lineup where they were zigzagged around the factory. And the factory was like a giant gas chamber. The Black Army was holding people in the line with their weapons, and if they stepped out of line, they were pushed or they were shot on the spot. It was very, very brutal. He told me that I needed to warn everyone about this. So that's why I'm doing this presentation. So he also asked me, why do you let them do this to you? Like, he's talking about why are people letting this happen? Like, why are we letting them do this to us? It was a war against humankind. And then there was also another dream the next night where it was about a manufactured war against extraterrestrials versus humanity. And they showed me that it wasn't real. They showed me how humans have precisely replicated craft, and they showed me specifically a blue colored egg-shaped craft, and how they had we have replicated it, probably through the craft that we have recovered. And it is impossible to tell the difference between the actual ET's craft and the human replicated craft. So they showed that to me. So these are the small units that maybe two humans can fit in, where up to 3 ETs can fit in it, because they're smaller, but they're the small vehicles. They showed me a device underneath the craft that can take down the peaceful ETs, and the humans were saying they were going, alien hunting is what they said. So it was like this sort of, it's just, I don't know how to put that into words. Like, humans are so ignorant that they would actually, want to hurt the ETs that are here to help us. But the ignorance was like stifling. It was just shocking how ignorant human beings are. So around this time, I started to experience surveillance. And so I'm going to go over some of these things. It got a little bit weird. So I did experience black helicopters flying over me and my apartment building. So I do have photos, and I'll include them. They're not the best photos because I was able to take a picture often when it was flying away, but yeah, it was really unsettling. Like, the black helicopters would fly over my building and the whole building would shake. And this is a huge apartment building. It's four stories. There's like 80 something units, and it was shaking. The neighbors started to notice and they were starting to get uncomfortable with some of these strange helicopter activities, as well as the owls that were showing up. So I asked the ETs to give me a sign that our experience was real and that I was having real contact, because it was making me feel a little crazy. I was like, I need some reality here. I need a reality check. I need to see that this is real. So could you please give me a sign? And so owls showed up outside of my window, and they would be connected directly to the phenomenon, directly to the contact. So another thing that I was getting was notifications on my phone and late night phone calls. And they were coming through when I was in flight mode. So I put my phone in flight mode, and I'd still be getting notifications. And so that was weird, because not really supposed to be able to get notifications. Like, you're not supposed to be able to get those notifications if your phone's on flight mode, but it was still somehow connecting to the network. I also got really bad dark paranormal activity happening around me, and I was having trouble sleeping. Then my son was removed from my care. He was taken out of a hospital, and he was actually stopped from seeing a doctor and just pulled out of the hospital, which was just, it's weird. I even the hospital can't explain how that happened. The social worker that I was working with, when I went to see her and talk to her about this, she couldn't access my file. My file was corrupted, and her phone stopped working, and she didn't even know I was at her office. She couldn't get any information. It was like when I arrived, and it was also, she said it had never happened before. So it was starting to get a little bit intense for me. And that's since I started doing the meditating and talking to them again. And so I think that they were picking up on the phenomenon, because I think that they can tell who's interacting with ETs. I think that they have ways to measure or to pick up on the energy or the dimensional, like, I don't really know exactly, but I think that they know. And I think also when you go public and you speak publicly about it, that is also another thing. But they definitely have this unusual ability to know what you're doing before, even the rest of the world knows. If you're talking to ETs or you're having these experiences and you're connected to the phenomenon, then most people eventually have these experiences of surveillance, helicopters, men in black. So I also wanted to point out that this phenomenon started to interact with other people. Ian, I hope you don't mind. I'm going to mention the owls. Is that okay with you?
Yeah, that's perfect. Go ahead.
Okay, thanks. So I do have an audio footage that I can go into as I go through this list, but I do have audio footage of this, the owls showing up outside of my window, and it's directly connected with each time I talk to the ETs. So if I'm meditating and I'm connecting through consciousness to them, the owls will show up with them and they stay there until the communication's over. So also the owls started to show up in Ian's life as well. And if I'm not mistaken, you did at one point, Ian, have an owl follow you as you were driving down the road.
Yes, I'll elaborate on that at the end if you like, and corroborate what we're saying here. So yes, I was definitely involved in some weird owl experiences.
Yeah, so this phenomenon was interacting with other people. There's Ian saying yes, he has experienced it, and he did actually get pretty. He got pretty. I would say you got quite a bit of experience with the phenomenon in subtle ways, number sequencing, owls, other things, messages. But I'm gonna keep going. So so the day that one of the contactees came forward through the meetup group here, she did a presentation and I'm not going to use her name, but I'm just going to say hi, M. And so what happened was I had a rainbow at 3:33 p.m. show up right over my house on that day specifically, right after meeting this contactee in our network who had a story that corroborated a lot of things, and we had a lot in common and felt really relieved to have met each other. So this rainbow was unusually bright, and it was directly, it looked like it was just over my house. I have a picture of it and I will show you guys. And that's going to be in the next slide. So the next thing was the number sequencing started to amplify. So it got to the point where every time I looked at the clock, and also I think Ian, you were getting this as well a lot. We were getting number sequencing, ones, twos, threes. They were repeating. There was a lot of repeating number sequencing, which is again a sort of a dimensional or subtle way of connecting, of showing us that we are connecting with that consciousness of the ETs and of the what they call is like harmonic resonance of the earth and of the consciousness that's here connecting. So I'm going to keep going. So my son and I saw a UFO together on the beach, and we saw it. It was timed perfectly where we had this really amazing night, just having a bonfire, just bonding and talking around a fire, and I just felt this great sense of peace being on the beach with my son. And it was dark, and it's just so beautiful. And the moment we sat down in the car to leave, a very, very clear UFO appeared. It was green. I got video footage of it, and I will show it to you guys. And it was an excellent piece of footage, and it was an incredibly good, clear UFO. So I will show you guys that. So here's a couple pictures. There's the rainbow. And photos don't always do it justice, but that rainbow was absolutely brilliant. It was so vibrant and so beautiful, and it really, like, I mean, this is my parking lot, that's my car there, so like it really felt like it was a message, contactees coming together. So the next one is the UFO. So if you look to the top left, that's sort of what it looked like to us. And then of course there's a few zoomed in shots as it's oscillating, because it was not a solid object at all. It was I'll show you the video. So I'm gonna
Is everyone seeing the video and sharing the screen? I'm not seeing it.
Yeah, we're seeing it fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, Mimi, I guess your computer's been
It's just me. This kind of thing happens all.
as well. I know it's yeah, it's part of it really is part of the phenomenon, unfortunately. It just goes hand in hand with experiencers and people, researchers and whatnot, especially when you start to uncover things that are significant. I really believe the more significant and the more reaction you're going to get, the more surveillance, the more, threats and warnings. And so these are the black helicopters here. So I've zoomed in on them. I have video footage of them showing up at night and just scaring the crap out of everybody here. And I have them flying over me, and it's so obvious, like it's not a coincidence that there's a black helicopter. I'm in the middle of a field and it's flying right over me. It could follow the highway and go where it needs to go, but it's going over me. So I think, without sounding paranoid, I mean, it started to make me paranoid, which I think is a normal response, but I understand like that this is real and that this is part of it. And I'm not freaking out. I was freaking out for a little while because it did get a little scary, but that's okay. That's just part of it. So there's a couple photos of the helicopters, and there's my apartment building. So you can see it's flying, right over.
Same for me, Crystal. I have the same kind of helicopters right now, right over my house every day. So.
Okay, yeah, and that seems like it also happened to Ian recently. So what we are doing right now together, they are watching us, because this is happening to Ian too, and it's happening to each of us connecting with each other. So yeah, it's nothing. I don't know. I can't say for sure. Like, what can we do, right? Like, this is important. If it wasn't important, they wouldn't be flying helicopters over our houses trying to scare us.
But do you think these are actually alien craft designed as black helicopters? They look human, but they're actually alien.
Yeah, the guy in the helicopter that I saw, he was wearing a suit. It was the Men in Black thing. He was wearing a suit. I saw him. He was close enough that I could see what he was wearing. That's weird, right? Okay, so I wanted to go actually before I go into the messages, because I want to show you the videos. Yeah, there we go, to go up. There it is. So I think that's fairly decent. If we slow it down and put it into high resolution, we can see that it really does look, it's definitely not a plane, and it's definitely a UFO. I'm gonna close. How do I close out of here? Sorry guys, I'm not very good at this stuff. Okay, so here's another one. There's a black helicopter. So that's flying over my house late at night and it's scaring everybody. It was making the building shake. It was really, my dogs were terrified. My son was terrified. This was like so obviously not normal for a helicopter to hover over your building and it's so close, it's making it shake. So that was unusual. It's scary to me. Yeah, so I only caught the tail end of it, but it had been. Anyway, you know what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna post the videos, like I'm gonna get a better copy of them and post them so that everybody can get a better look and you can judge for yourself. Because in the presentation here, I'm finding that it's not quite good quality, just the way I'm presenting it. So I apologize for that, but I will post them. But I'd like to go to the messages for humanity. So the first message is very clear. They made it very, very clear. We have to wake up and see that the powers that control the world are manipulating us all. And that, I mean, they're definitely saying that to a lot of people, not just me. The other one is that people are being contacted in mass numbers. And so I think that's important. Like we are being sort of activated. the number sequences, 1111, 111, 222, 333. That is a harmonic resonance. And so that is part of the ascension, I think. I think that it's connected to the ET phenomenon as well, because they are very strongly connected to our ascension process. So these are sort of like the little signs that say you're tapping into it. So if you're seeing those repetitive numbers, you're tapping into it. And listen to the messages. So not just contactees, but also shaman, healers, meditators, and contactees. We are having matching dreams, experiences, visions of waves, and we're having messages, and we're having clear messages about humanity, about the future for us. It's not just about you personally in your own life. These are big picture messages that are coming through each of us. Some of the contactees, we can say for sure, myself included, we have had orchestrated lives. So these events are not just random and they're not coincidental, but they are more or less orchestrated. And we've also had extraterrestrial intervention to avoid death and accidents. So as if we are being kept alive because we are here for an important reason. So some of us have actually been saved from things, like I said, Cougar Attack, speeding car through a red light, the pole falling out of the top of the hotel, those kind of things. There's probably more too. Like I was saved from drowning too. Somebody rescued me when I had my first NDE. I was rescued, or I would have died, right? But I was rescued, and so there's just so many things when you put it all together, and a lot of contactees. Like when you start putting it together, it's almost mind blowing how insane that is. Like how you actually have been saved over and over again, and given messages. Like, I mean, we have a purpose, and it's not like one of us is special. Like we're all special. We all have an important role, but for some reason or another, some of us have been designated to, and I think mine is to share the message, because it's not fun having helicopters, and it's not fun having men in black and, having demonic stuff going on and feeling like you're under attack sometimes. That's not fun, right? But it's like, this is short-term sacrifice for long-term gain, because long term humanity has to hear these messages. We have to know this. So the one thing that's important is that fear is the only tool that the dark extraterrestrials have against us. This is so important. Like, I cannot stress this enough. If you are afraid, you are operating in the paradigm that is going to destroy the planet. That is the paradigm, that is the mentality that is going to take control and run the show. So we have to transcend that fear. And also we got to look at you got to look at the signs, you got to look at reality. Like what's really going on. So that's what they're saying. Many people are here and have been placed here intentionally to assist humanity. So if you are a contactee, if you have messages, if you have these unusual orchestrated lives, the things that are going on with you, that is not coincidence. You have a calling. You have a calling, and you're here to assist. We can create a better reality by coming together and sacrificing our short-term comfort for the long-term, short-term comfort for long-term change. So fighting this whole paradigm doesn't mean going out and fighting with violence. It's fighting with removing ourselves completely from the fear and stop complying. Like, I'm not going to go into the COVID stuff because I'm going to go on a tangent if I do, but I will say, like, if it's fear-based and we're just like, this fear-based stuff is exactly what it's been created. It's their dark grid. It's the power against us. So, like I said, some of us are being called into action by the ETs, and you can't deny it. You know you are. If you're watching this and you're resonating with it and you're saying, I feel this so much, you can feel it. Like, you can't deny it and you can't ignore it either. They won't. It's almost like if you ignore it, it'll drive you nuts. You have to start talking about it and coming together and working towards this better future. So another important thing is, this has come to me recently, and it was because the phenomenon started to get scary for me, and I was having trouble sleeping. I was waking up to some creepy stuff, and I started to get really scared. And I had to go and talk to people, other friends who are meditators and healers, and they had to help me through this process where it was like, this is so important. Like, you must uphold the light at all costs. Like, this light grid, it's not like you can just contribute to the light grid when you're feeling good. Like, we are holding this grid all the time, no matter how scared we are, no matter what is happening. We're holding that grid as a reversal to this dark grid that we were shown. And I can tell you that I'm not the only one who's seen the dark grid either. And I'm not the only one who was told these messages about this dark ET race and what they're doing. But I know for sure that more people are being shown a grid of light than were shown the dark grid. More people were shown about this grid of light. And so this light grid thing is not like a fad or it's the real deal. Like, they operate on consciousness. So if we envision a grid of light in our consciousness, in our mass consciousness, we create it and we hold it. We hold that. We don't disconnect from it for a second. We hold it while we're sleeping. We hold it in our everyday life. At every moment, we hold that light. And that means no fear. So I created a website that is dedicated to contactees, and I would call it like grid workers. So people who are called to action and who are truly interested in working together for a better world through this conscious light grid. And I think the light grid is sort of a metaphor as well, because like, we're upholding the highest vibrations of the planet and we're keeping the ascension going upwards. That's what we want to do, is we want to create a better world. We don't want to go down to their Holocaust hell. We want to go up together. We want to bring each other. If 75 million people on the planet were to come together and manifest the ascension, then we would be able to bring everybody along. It's a critical mass type of scenario where not everybody has to wake it up, but the ones that are being contacted and having these messages, if there's probably more than 75 million of us who are getting the messages, who are feeling the call to action, who are feeling super inspired to work together, and who are just absolutely watching this train wreck as it's coming down. Like, it's a train wreck. Humanity and the state of the world right now is going either way. And so we are going to do it, whether they decide to step in with the waves at the very last second, like they did with me and the Cougar. That could be what ends up happening. But at the end, it is going to happen. I think that we have a chance to do this on our own. And so I'm hoping that the messages that I share with the world will be able to go out into the world and help create a better world, and not in a few years or like now. I want this to start affecting everything in a positive way right now, because we have very little time left. And that I can tell you for sure, because they're showing me visions of things that are happening soon. And so my hope and my prayer for all of us, and it's not even like I'm hoping, it's like I know that we're doing this, we're doing it. But I guess in a way I hope that other people can start to see it in more of a dimensional way and start to see the reality. Yeah, so I think that we have ET intervention who are trying to help us live up to our fullest potential. And because of the vibrational shifts and the dark ETs that came here may have strategically planned coming here based on our potential to our ascension. So it might have been, you know, connected to the inevitable ascension of the planet and the vibrational fields here. People talk about the age of enlightenment. So this is all connected. It's like a special time, and we have so many ETs watching. It's not just the Greys, and it's not just the Nordics, or like they're talking the whole intergalactic community is watching. They're all rooting for us. Like we're doing it. We are doing it. We have to really, you know, we do have to stay really focused, and we can't just break the light because we're having a bad day, or, you know, we have to stay in that light and keep it flowing from our heart centers out into that grid. And we are trying to reverse, you know, a potentially really dark outcome. So I think I've kind of covered everything. You guys probably have a ton of questions. There's probably a lot of stuff that you might want some clarification on. So I think I'm ready to, if you guys want to do Q&A,